Wow.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben Gordon. I am the infamous Cat Gordon's son. I am a senior from Palo Alto High School in the Silicon Valley of the Bay Area. I am a community service advocate. I work a lot with academic-based, excellence and achievements. Work for our local school district. And I wanted to first start off with the picture of my mom and I from 8 years ago.
Oh.
I've changed a whole lot. I've been beyond thrilled to have experienced the last 8 years with my parents, my brother, and the 3% community. I have had the utmost fun. I've been at each conference and had a blast every year, learned so much from all of us. And this is the first time I've been on stage, and I am so beyond thrilled to be joined by Matias Benitez, right?
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
Chen
correct.
as well.
So, as Ben said, I'm Matt Chen. I'm a senior at Regis High School in New York City. I live in New Jersey with my parents, my dog, my cats, and I have an older brother who's studying pharmacy.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Matias Benitez. I'm also a senior in Regis High School in New York City. I'm 18, so I'm not too old. So yeah, we're all pretty young here. I have two older siblings. One of them is my older sister, who really inspired me to get involved in the feminist movement. Yeah.
Absolutely. So these two gentlemen started something absolutely fantastic at their all-boys high school. So they are at Regis High School in New York, as they said, and they started a feminist club. So it's a Jesuit high school, I believe, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you guys give us a quick description about the club itself and kind of the goals that you guys have?
Sure. So our main goal, our mission is to galvanize the students in our school to become allies for women through advocating for gender equality. And the way through which we achieve this is weekly meetings on contemporary issues of gender inequality that just occur in the news, in the world, in America, and more like monthly interschool meetings, which I'll let Matias talk a little bit more about.
So we have these interschool meetings, mainly with, well, so far we've really only done them with all-girls schools in our area, schools that are kind of considered our unofficial sister schools that have had feminist groups for much longer than us. And so we have monthly meetings. One of our most popular meeting that got around 70 people, 60-ish people, was one that when Brett Kavanaugh was being nominated for the Supreme Court justice, and the allegations by Dr. Ford, and that really got a lot of people talking back then.
Yeah. So we have a picture here of these two gentlemen on the Washington Post. How did we get to this point? How did you guys get up there?
Oh, well, what happened is I was actually at a family friend's son's birthday party with my mom, and I was, when you're a teenager and there's all these adults there, you don't know who to talk to. And so I just talked to this random guy, and he turned out he was a freelance journalist, and he was just wondering, what do you do in school, all of that. And this was in October of 2017, yeah? 2018, and I was just saying, I do this thing called HeForShe, and he said, oh, that's really cool, and then just left it at that. And then a few months later, in January, right after the Covington High School Lincoln Memorial incident, I don't know if people know exactly what happened there. It was basically there was a bit of confrontation that happened that put it's another Catholic high school, all boys, and that put, I think, teenage boys in a really bad light. And he probably thought that hey, I know this teenage boy and his club, and I want to show my readers that there's really more to teenage boys out there than one would think.
Yeah. What kind of impact did you guys feel, at the high school level after that article came out in terms of interacting with your peers and your teachers and, the overall Regis community?
Well, I mean, it was first a trickle and then more like a waterfall where, because we didn't really publicize it just because we didn't want to
Yeah.
like lift ourselves up at the expense of like others. So
It's just weird, honestly,
yeah.
if you just start publicizing an article.
yeah. So there is a large majority of people saying like, this is so cool, really happy for you. And then some people thought we cast them in too negative of a light. So there was that opinion, I would say, but most people were just excited about it.
I think one thing is that even when we started the club, that was a few months, like about a half year or so, before the articles came out. We didn't really know what we were doing actually in terms of, we didn't know how, when we interacted with the girls' schools, how would they react to us as all boys environment, all these, without like women in the room, except for our moderator, talking about feminism and how would they take that. And we were surprised that they really, our peers in the girls' schools nearby thought it was a really great idea. We were surprised that teachers in our school saw that this issue in general had not been talked about, had like seldom been discussed in our school. And they were really glad to have this club go on. And it's really great that that educators know that the future are the students, and they really try and encourage people to be exposed to what's going on in the world, especially in all-boys high school, where you're not exposed to 50% of the world.
Yeah. So you're talking about the impact that you guys saw there. At what point, and I remember when my mom first came home saying she wanted to start this conference, and we were sitting at the dinner table, and she said, I can't. She had this like urge. I can't just not do this. It was something that had to be done. Did you guys have a moment when you were sitting at your dinner table and said, this is it. This has to be done?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to go first?
Well, so for me, it was when Brett Kavanaugh was nominated to the Supreme Court. So HeForShe was already a bit established by this point, but that was really the moment when we were discussing that I felt like HeForShe was a really great outlet to be discussing what it means to be a high school student decades later in a similar high school, in a similar Jesuit high school like Georgetown Prep, where Brett Kavanaugh attended. So I thought HeForShe was really necessary for catalyzing these discussions within our school, and that's when I felt really grateful that we had this place to discuss.
Oh, and for me, I would say that it happened when when we were starting the club, when we were writing our proposal to the school for a club to be started, that I was thinking actually at the time, I was in student government back then, that like being a true politician, how would people react if I did this? Would I like lose my spot in student government? And so I had this whole idea for some reason. But I think it was really like when we approached the teacher about the club, her enthusiasm, it was actually, this whole idea came out of a conversation with my sister where we were discussing how kind of crazy it would be if an all-boys high school had the discussion. And by the end of the discussion, we realized that it was something that was just so important that like I texted Matt and asked him if he wanted to do it. That's how we started. And yeah, it's really just the enthusiasm, the support of other people that really propels us, societal progress, anything like this.
Yeah, and what held you back? What was the opposition? What was, the administration and the other students? What were they saying, those who weren't in favor of what you guys were doing?
I think for us, when we were starting out, we thought maybe it might have been the administration, but it wasn't really the administration. Neither was it the teachers, and that the teachers, I think teachers in general are really great people because they choose to work with the next generation of people in general. And yeah, the teachers. And they gave us a lot of support. But there were some students who saw the club, they see gender equality as like finished, as we've solved it. I think when people aren't exposed to what the wage gap and how it's not, like sexism nowadays isn't just like voting rights or something like that, it's more institutionalized. that's where people didn't really understand what we were doing, and so they wondered, why are we discussing this? What is the role of boys in a movement that's they saw as not for them and by them? And that's our initial reaction. But since then, I think we've changed some minds, not all minds in general. You can't ever change what everyone's thinking, but we really try to.
Yeah, definitely. And since you guys first came together and you started gathering students, how have your meetings changed? How have you guys gone about influencing people and getting different voices heard as well?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, it was mostly just about recognizing that there was a problem, not within, that there was like a gender inequality problem, and talking about that, discussing the different facets of that. But I think as we've grown as a club, it's, to me, also become a little bit about community building within our school, but also with other schools. So having the chance to meet other people from different schools to broaden our perspectives and make new friends too.
I completely agree with Matt. One thing I just remembered was, I think that when we started out, our conception of what gender equality was not as nuanced as it is now, in that I think when anyone learned, this feminism in general is just such a complex topic, that when we started, we knew that we weren't experts in it at all, and we still aren't, but we just wanted to start talking about it. And so over time, we've learned a lot more. I think the school community has learned a lot more. Our members have learned a lot more. And also, as part of Matt's point about community building, we've really seen that people have been, as time has gone on, been able to share more about their insecurities about the current way the world is right now, and share how they, for example, the topic of toxic masculinity, or masculinity in general, how they deal with that idea. Yeah.
So I'm glad we've gotten a chance to kind of see the history of the club, but we're here today in a room with some of the most influential leaders of the industry. How can the people in the 3% movement support you guys?
Well, I think obviously nobody's quite as young as we are here, so sorry. So I would imagine that there are communities which you inhabit where you have some influence, whether it's as a parent or whether it's as a creative director. And so I think it would be important to realize that you're in a unique position to affect change, that you have almost a responsibility to utilize the influence that you have to help the feminism movement and to help end gender inequality.
Yeah. I completely agree with that again. I think that I think it's important that we have, with our club in general, it's kind of like some people believe that the feminist movement was for women, by women, and they leave out the other 50%. And I think that's where really we come in that when sometimes you meet people who talk to their kids or their daughters about feminism, but they don't talk to their sons about feminism. I think that's really important. And then secondly, because we're in a room with a lot of people who work in media and advertising, I think it's very important that when we see teenage boys in general, like us on the stage, we don't have, whenever I don't watch TV too much, but when I get the general impression that a lot of the advertisements make it seem like teenage boys just interact very bro-y. They only talk about sports, maybe a little bit about video games, that's it. And that's just completely opposite to how I interact with other people. And I think Matt and I, a lot of the people we know in our school interact. And that's an all-boys environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, we've talked about the past and what we can do today. Looking forward, where do you see your club being, in the next 12 months, in the next 5 years? Down the road, what are the goals of, the next generation of our leaders?
Well, I mean, I would hope that it doesn't have to exist, honestly. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay, well, yeah. We see that this is obviously an issue. I think every issue in general, we think that we don't want it to ever exist, but it's just, well, I see feminism or even like racism in general like as a topic that we have to forever push to change how we think, and that our current status quo is never fully equal, I think, ever. And we need to always be conscious of which ways we benefit from a system, or we hear of people who don't understand what like their privileges in life, or what they do not have to experience. Like the last speaker, that's something that I wish that we could bring that to our meetings, a VR set, and try that out. That would be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. So these gentlemen weren't here yesterday. It's their first day. It's the innovation that's here is spectacular. We've heard, speakers of all different kinds come out and influence everybody that's in the room. We're low on time, but I do want to give a chance to answer some questions because I'm sure there's many. Is there anyone out there that does have a question for us?
I mean, holy crap, guys. I like these two boys, and I like the parents to call me. Question. Thank you for everything you've done and you're doing. And I have many questions, but I'll just say one. What are some of the ways you have changed your behaviors based on the conversations that you're having with one another in this group that you think are setting better examples for young men?
I know about a year ago we had a discussion with one of our moderators about being conscious of the language that we use when we're talking about girls. So instead of saying, oh, the girls from this school, you could just say the students from this school, and just to put us all on an equal level instead of like making it immediately about our gender, just recognize what we have in common, what we share.
Mm-hmm. I think in general, when we started out, I admit I didn't really know much about, I knew a lot about the feminist movement, but I didn't really know, of the 100% that I know today, well, using percentages like this place, of the percentage of my knowledge now, I would say I only knew 10% or 20% of what I knew before. In things that for example, I didn't know the difference between sex and gender, for example. That's something that I was never really taught in school. And that's something that I think schools in general are trying to change now, and that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Do we have time for one more? Who has a question? We have one over here.
I wanted to ask, you guys have the initiative and innovation. How do you get other guys in your school to join your club and to start talking about this?
Something in our lives, then that really makes for good discussion and gets a lot of people to come to our meetings. So like the discussion of toxic masculinity, we framed it in a way so that people would find it relatable.
I think also it's important to recognize that it's kind of I think when it comes to topics like that, it's kind of we have to engage with people who don't necessarily consider themselves feminists. I don't think a lot of people in our school even knew the actual definition of feminist, or some of them when we started, or at least we didn't realize that they heard of the movement at all. And so, a lot of my friends or Matt's friends, we just keep on pestering them to come to meetings, and then eventually they come and they realize that they really enjoy it. It's less about just we try not to be too confrontational. We want people to learn rather than just get defensive and not take anything out of it. And that's really important to us.
Yeah. I cannot thank you guys enough for coming out, flying out from New York and joining us today. I hope you guys have a lot of fun for the rest of the evening. And I thank you guys all for coming to listen to us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.